Welcome to ABL Advisors video series featuring thought leaders from the commercial finance industry. Today, my guest is Steve Emerson, partner with Dry Creek Capital. Thanks for being here today, Steve.
Thank you.
I'd like to begin on today's topic, which is your thoughts on the state of the distressed commercial real estate market in the United States. And with that, I'd like to start on the first question for our listeners today. And that is, the commercial real estate market is no stranger to boom and bust cycles, that's for sure. How would you describe the current cycle that we're in today, Steve?
Right. I'd say today it's really like many parts of the economy. It's really a story of winners and losers. Industrial is doing extremely well. Retail is pretty down in most parts of the country. Although the mall that's a couple blocks from where I sit right now is going gangbusters. You can't get a parking spot on the weekend. Hotels are, I'm not really sure what's happening with hotels because most hotels are still at pretty low occupancy, losing money. But yet when a hotel does trade or debt on a hotel, which is more where we play, they're going at pretty high prices, which doesn't make a ton of sense. But I guess people are just expecting like a major rebrand and a rebound, and they're saying, hey, if I can get it at a 10% discount to what I would have paid 3 years ago, that's great. Even though the numbers would indicate a 80% discount, right? But they're just expecting a major rebound. Apartments kind of depends on where you're at. Obviously real estate location is the biggest story. And then offices, again, it's that value is really in the eye of the beholder, right? You can appraisal values are a little bit out the window right now. You just have to look at it and say, what's their rent roll? Who are their tenants? Are their tenants going to stay or not? If you do have a building that is got higher than normal vacancy, you can't just say, oh, it'll get back, because there are a lot of vacancies in the market right now, and so it really depends on the property. So office is probably the one that's really kind of in between, that you can pretty much say across the board. Retail is a bit down, industrial is up, but office is really based on who your tenants are, if you have tenants.
So it's actually very difficult to say that we're in a boom or bust cycle, like you say sometimes in the real estate market. This is really something that's based on what's happening in these specific sectors. We really can't say a comment about boom or bust, right?
Right. I would agree. I mean, I'd say if you told me I had to say, are we is the market heading up or heading down? I really would say it depends on what part of the market you're in. I can make an argument for downward pressure on a lot of parts of the market, and there's certainly like hotels. I mean, there's a lot of people smarter than me putting a lot of money into hotels right now, so they must believe that hotels are on their way back.
Yeah, it's interesting because we can read a lot of different pieces in the news as to what's happening in different sectors of the commercial real estate market, but we get conflicting reports as well. Now, what's driving commercial debt obligation distress right now in the commercial real estate market? And I'll qualify that saying that, do you think that the elimination of the government stimulus packages will accelerate the distress on the debt repayments, or have commercial real estate developers really weathered the worst of the storm, and are we moving in the direction of positivity at this point? Can we say that?
Sure. Well, your question had an assumption in it when you said when, but the question might be if, right? Because at this point, nobody wants to be the politician who ends stimulus programs, right? You just want to. It seems that right now we're in this position where no one wants to be the leader when the economy turns down. But I mean, the fact is that economies, they need to cool off at some point. You can't just keep stoking the fire, but more money keeps being dumped into the economy. So there certainly is a kick the can down the road type mentality for a lot of people. There are a lot of businesses out there that are, only surviving because of government stimulus money. And nobody wants to, say, hey, let that business die. That want to, just keep it alive. And but at some point, some businesses do have to go away, right? That's just the nature of capitalism, frankly. And the longer that you just keep things alive that shouldn't be, you've got these zombie businesses out there, and frankly, real estate as well. You say at some point it's got to, these have to come down, and you're starting to see some of it. We're busier now than we have been in probably 6-7 years. Now Dry Creek is a new fund, but we all came from a group together where we were doing very similar business, and so I can speak to what things were like for us before. Probably since 2014, we're busier now than we were since 2014. But it's a mix of what we're seeing. Some of the stuff we're seeing, I put most of it into kind of one of three buckets, right? One is that you actually have a pretty decent, relationship, where, they got hit by COVID, but, you can pretty easily see a bounce back. I put a lot of the, hotels into that category. A second category is frankly a lot of the situations we're looking at are businesses that were frankly circling the drain pre-COVID, and COVID just destroyed them. And honestly, it's probably just a liquidation at this point, and we try not to get involved in those types of situations. And then the third bucket, well, let's say kind of miscellaneous, because there's a lot of parts to that, but it's just it's businesses that are just, they're okay. They've probably got some stimulus money that's helping them out. But again, it's the distress that's in the market is, some of it is just, people seem to forget. I mean, and obviously, COVID has changed everything, but the fact is that pre-COVID, we were in, year 13 of a bull market. And most people thought that COVID would be, what finally, I mean, we were out there trying to raise money for our fund pre-COVID, because we said, just based on the timing of the macro, that, hey, there's got to be a downturn at some point. And COVID, largely did, cause a downturn, but it was much shorter lived than any of us would have thought. And so, we're not sure that, that we really saw the downturn that, frankly, should have happened.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that goes into the comment you said of kicking the can down the road, which makes it more difficult to really understand where we are in that cycle right now. What about geography, Steve? When I think about commercial real estate, I always think about different parts of the country, Northeast, Southeast, whatever it might be.
Sure.
Do you have any thoughts on what areas of the country are like to experience perhaps the greatest level of distress in commercial real estate?
Yeah, well, I can speak first to maybe the ones that already have seen the greatest level of distress. Historically, one of my taglines was, we're national in geography except New York City, because the reasoning was always that I'm out here in Denver. 9 out of 10 of my competitors are in New York City. So if I'm the schmuck buying something in New York City that's a block away from all of my competitors, what did I miss, right? But we've actually changed that outlook because there's been so much distress in New York because so many people just fled the city with the, with COVID. Vacancies are at all-time high. Retail, office. There isn't really a whole lot of industrial in New York. Hotel, obviously. So we actually have done some of our first ever, acquisitions in New York. You're seeing some of the same things, downtown LA, downtown San Francisco. But those markets will come back. The reason we're buying things in New York is because, this is something that, people are moving out of the city, but young people want to live in New York City. They want to live in San Francisco. They want to live in LA. And there is it's interesting because, some of the projects we're looking at kind of, pre-downturn were based on really trying to increase density in some of these, maybe not New York as much as LA, San Francisco, building higher, building, to really allow people to, live downtown. And, right now there's a huge flight, away from that. But but we think it'll come back. I mean, I generally tend to think things will go back to normal, right? At some point, how long that takes, it could be a year, 2, 3 years before people really come back in mass to a place like New York. But it'll be there eventually.
Yeah, and then the exodus from the cities has been going on around the country, but again, we'll see how that all shakes out. Now, typically, when the economy emerges from a recession, typically construction accelerates.
Right.
Do you anticipate, Steve, that there's going to be an acceleration in construction for the balance of 2021 and into 2022, considering the widely reported shortages of building supplies in the construction industry?
Yeah, again, that question is based on a premise that I'm not sure about, right? I mean, the premise is that we're emerging from a recession. I don't know that we really had the recession. I mean, certainly the metrics that you normally use to define a recession, clearly we had one. You had huge unemployment, but yet you had this, separation of your normal metrics where you had, never before seen unemployment, but yet the stock market is up. And so, and you've got, businesses that are, just hanging on, right? Again, possibly because of stimulus, possibly because they were able to, retool into, a different product that they'd never really done before, which is going to go away, whatever the reason might be. So, again, I think it'll be situation specific. I mean, certainly there is, shortages of supply in places like Denver, Austin, places like that. Do I expect to see a lot of cranes in New York City in the short term? Probably not. Places like Miami somehow seems to be overheated already. I'm not sure how that's possible, but it is. I remember back in the last downturn, everybody was reading articles about Miami about how there's a 15-year supply, right, of product of condos, in 2000. Now that was based on, how many condos were purchased in February of 2010, right? Or 2008 or whatever the number, 2009, whatever the year might've been. And, there are cranes again, 3 years later, right? I again expect that'll probably be the case, but, will be situation specific.
Yeah, we'll see. That's the seems to be the buzz phrase of the year that we'll see, and that's the truth. I totally understand that. The last question I have for you, and again, you kind of touched on it already, just if you want to summarize in any way, do you have any type of an outlook for commercial real estate overall for the balance of 2021 to 22? I know that's difficult based on everything we already said, but
Sure.
Anything you'd like to wrap it up with?
Yeah, I mean, for our market, I think there certainly are distressed properties out there where, bankers like anyone else have had that same wait and see approach, right? And I think there is product out there that needs to come to market that is distressed. So I think we will continue to see more flow as that happens now. Now it's been interesting because this downturn has been different, and certainly trying to contrast to the last one, that there was just the last downturn was caused by a lack of liquidity. Right. This downturn, there's been no lack of liquidity. In fact, there's been an overabundance of liquidity. So, we'll see how that shapes it. That, I mean, there have been properties trading at prices that we just can't understand. And so we'll see if those properties kind of circle back around. I mean, if someone's paying, 20% premium on something, how does that survive? So will we see, properties that got sold kind of right in the midst of COVID come back on the market, in 2 years at a lower price? I wouldn't be surprised to see it. But like we said, it's hard to say exactly when or if that'll happen. But our expectation is that there will be, a robust distress market for a little while, and we'll see. As the economy does, start to improve again, a lot of money was poured into distress. We'll see if some of that kind of goes back into, more normal financing, and there isn't quite so much, supply of capital in our market.
Fair enough. It's not an easy market to prognosticate in many ways at this point. But Steve, that wraps up my questions for you today. It's been very informative. I appreciate it very much. Thanks very much for being here. I wish you and your team a lot of luck with the new launch. I'm sure that you'll find your way into the marketplace and be very busy. But if we can have an opportunity to maybe speak with you towards the end of the year, maybe we'll do that again and get a wrap up and see how things went this year.
Fantastic. That'll be great. That'll be great. Thank you.